If you've been following me for any length of time, you know one of the things I talk about is whatever your business is, that is your secondary business. The first business you should be in is your immediate company. Your immediate company that does a business. And my guest today gets that completely. Helping business owners in growth mode go farther, faster. This is EntreGrow. Matt Wolfe, welcome.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be fun.
I've got to ask you a question that is just weighing on my mind.
Sure.
Other than the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, what has been the single most strangest thing that has happened to you in 2020?
Just sort of being more forced to be locked into my house and having my kids around all day, every day is probably the biggest sort of shift that's happened. But other than that, my life hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot, and nothing is really coming to mind that's been like a real weird, strange thing.
All right, I'm going to share mine.
Okay.
Living in Arizona, when the toilet paper crisis started, I went out and ordered bidets for the entire house.
Nice.
In Arizona, the water doesn't get super cold in the summertime. So we had warm water bidets all summer long. Then the cold weather set in. Let me tell you something. When you're not expecting cold water, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I can imagine that. We don't have the bidets. Luckily we were stocked up on toilet paper when we needed to be, but so we never went the bidet route, but I can imagine that the ice cold water going where you don't want it is a fun surprise.
Matt, let me tell you, when this whole toilet paper shortage began, I was in the middle of the ocean on a Carnival cruise with my family. Now,
oh my gosh.
You have to imagine the panic that was going through our minds. We have a family of 7. We're on a cruise in the middle of the ocean. We're hearing about cruise ships not being allowed to dock. And we're going, oh my God, we don't have toilet paper when we get home. What are we going to do? So I got on Amazon while we were on vacation and I ordered bidets.
Oh man.
And they've been the best thing ever. Of course, now we have some people who don't know how to use them. And we've had a couple of guests be surprised when
Yep.
Anyway,
I can imagine. Yeah, I was actually in Florida. I was in Orlando speaking at an event when all of the lockdown stuff started to happen. So I think like the most sort of nerve-wracking thing that happened was I was afraid I was going to get stuck in Orlando and not be able to get home back to San Diego because we were actually speaking at an event in March. And I think it was one of the last events that, was kind of allowed to happen. And when we were flying to Orlando, there was people on the plane with us saying that they're flying to Orlando, but they got a text message 10 minutes earlier that the event they were going to was canceled, but they had the plane ticket anyway. So they were getting on the plane and they were going. So we were on the plane flying to Orlando going, I wonder if we're going to be able to get home from this trip. Luckily, everything worked out and we got home on schedule and everything, but we had a little bit of a freak out moment there.
Oh, sure. Well, worst case scenario, you could have always rented a car and driven from the East Coast all the way back to San Diego, which would have sucked, but it would have been a fun tour across the U.S., right?
Yeah. Actually, my partner and I, Joe, he actually bought a car in Austin, Texas when I was out there with him. So we flew out to Austin. He bought a car while we were out there and we drove it from Austin back to San Diego. So that was like a 2.5 day road trip all in. That was an interesting experience. I don't think I'd want to do it all the way from Orlando though.
Now, I don't know about you, Matt, but when I do a road trip like that, especially if there's someone related to the business in the car, man, do we get a lot of brainstorming and idea generation done. Do you find cars to be an efficient workspace for you in terms of idea generation?
Oh yeah. And in fact, my partner, Joe, and I, what we'll do about once a week is we'll get in one of our cars and literally just drive around town. We'll go for an hour drive and we actually game plan stuff in our business while we're driving. We do that more often than we do it in front of like a whiteboard or something. We go for a drive and chat while out on the road. It's a pretty common occurrence for us. I'd say 3 times a month at least, usually once a week.
Now, podcast listeners, I want you to just take that in what he just said, because your office may not be the best place to do your brainstorming and creative thinking, especially if you're working from home. And a lot of entrepreneurs these days are working from home. We're fortunate. I've got an office that I can escape my family from. Shh, don't let them hear it. But they know, no, I can escape the chaos of home to come to my office. But that time in the car is sacred to me because it's where a lot of processing and thinking gets done. Just like the shower. The shower is another place where a lot of creative ideas happen. But find those places that work for you because, for me, Matt, the car is an amazing place. The shower is an amazing place. And I'm sure you have a couple of other places in your life that are just the idea generation spots. Could you share one or two more with us?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I go and walk my dog every single night. I'm weird in this way. I think my neighborhood probably thinks I'm a weirdo because I go walk my dog at 10 o'clock at night. So I'm out there with a flashlight in the middle of the night by myself walking my dog. But for whatever reason, at nighttime when I'm out there by myself, just like wandering the streets of my neighborhood, that's when I get like a flood of ideas to me. For me, the shower is a big one too. So the shower, but really, just me by myself going and walking my dog at night is when I get a lot of ideas. When I'm with my partner, we go for drives. I'm kind of a big believer that if, the best ideas aren't going to come when you're sitting in the place where you're used to getting all the work done, right? If I'm sitting at my computer all day, kind of doing the work, it's probably not going to be the same place where all the best ideas come to me. You got to kind of get out of that space and, change up the environment a little bit. And yeah, I'm right with you on that sort of philosophy there.
One of the things that I've discovered over the last several years is that most people that are entrepreneurs or people like me who are artists with entrepreneurial tendencies, right? I don't define myself as a purebred entrepreneur, have a high level of ADD. And for me, I noticed that when I'm trying to get work done in the office, the place that I get the work done, if there's music on or an audio book, I can't function. I am completely dysfunctional.
Yep. I'm
and
completely
the same. Sometimes the cone of silence. Now, I don't know if you do this. Like I have noise canceling headphones. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I put on my noise canceling headphones and I crank up white noise.
Mm-hmm. I use Brain FM. There's a site called Brain FM that I really like that it plays music without lyrics, but it's, supposedly scientifically tested to help you focus and stuff. And that seems to work really good for me. I put on these exact headphones that I'm wearing, put on this Brain FM website in my ears, and that helps me kind of get focused. It also helps me because my kids are literally in the rooms next to me. So when I put that on, it sort of tunes everything else out and just kind of lets me get into my flow. But yeah, absolutely. I'm just like that. I can't listen to music with words. If people are, if my kids are fighting with each other in the background, that's going to distract me. If they're, there's something going on, like the, neighbors trimming the trees next door or something like that, all of that stuff sort of distracts me. So I force myself into a bubble with my headphones and, putting on some sort of no lyric background music and going to town. That really, really helps me get into a flow state.
Yeah. Now, speaking of flow, let's talk about your podcast because it's got the name Flow in it. How did you guys start the Hustle and Flow podcast? Tell me about it, its genesis, and who it really serves today.
Sure. So our podcasting journey actually started in 2010. That's when our first podcast came out. So my partner and I, Joe, we both worked in the shutter company together, window covering shutters. And that's where we got to know each other. And in the evenings, we started doing some blogging and content marketing. We started a couple blogs together. And so we were doing that in the evenings and on the side.
Now, wait, back then you were keyword stuffing the shit out of the blogs, right?
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
And the way we were monetizing the blogs was we were allowing people to buy links on our blogs for SEO purposes. So we were,
of course you were.
So we were doing all the things that break the rules today back then, but back then they weren't breaking rules. So.
No, back then that was allowed. It was white hat-ish, gray maybe. Yeah. But today, so for those that are listening that don't understand the whole content side of things, I want to just clarify what this is. In the SEO world, there's something called black hat. Mm-hmm. And then there's something called white hat. And in the middle is gray. White hat is good SEO. Black hat is the really bad stuff like you just talked about. And then in the middle are these things that sometimes you look the other way. Sometimes you go, that's okay.
Yeah, it's a gray area. Yeah,
it's a gray, right? It's a gray. It's not black. It's not white. It's gray. It's right in the middle. So continue.
Yeah. So we were blogging. We had a personal finance blog. We had a health blog, and we actually had a gardening blog because the health and finance blog were doing well. And so we're like, let's throw a gardening blog in there, something we know absolutely nothing about, but these ones are working. So let's do another one. So that one actually failed after a couple months, but the finance blog and the health blogs ran for a while. And then in 2008, we had, a little shake up in our economy, let's just call it that. And people stopped buying shutters for their house. They stopped buying the window coverings that we were selling, and that business started to struggle. And so in
Did the
2000,
business eventually get shuttered?
it did actually. It did. It actually.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Eventually, it's actually back today. The company sort of started a few years later, but it did actually end up going under. And so Joe and I were kind of forced to figure out what to do next. And we decided, you know what, this blogging thing is making us a little bit of money. Let's go all in on this. If we're going all in on this, maybe it'll make us a lot of money. So we actually started going full-time blogging in 2009. And then started our first podcast called the Online Income Podcast in 2010. And then, between 2010 and 2017, so over like a 7-year span, we experimented all over the place. We had agencies. We tried to launch software companies. We set up multiple blogs that kind of faded away. We sold online courses. We did coaching. We did consulting. We kind of jumped around all over the place from 2009-ish, 2010-ish to 2017. And in 2017, we decided, hey, let's get real focused on this podcast thing. We'd kind of been doing it off and on over the years, but there was no consistency to it.
Right. The proverbial dipping your toe in the podcast water.
Exactly. Okay. So we had 4 or 5 different shows under multiple different names, but none of them ever made it past about episode 15, maybe. So we were just kind of all over the place for several years. And then 2017 was when we decided, all right, let's go all in on this podcasting thing. By that point, we were making some good revenue off of affiliate offers. And so we decided, let's go all in on podcasting and affiliate marketing. And that's when we started the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. So that was January of 2017. So January 2021, that'll be 4 years of doing exactly what we're doing today consistently.
So I want to make sure you've gotten past episode 15 then, right?
Yes, we're approaching episode 400.
That's incredible. Now, something, Matt, you said, and I want to go back just about a minute and a half into our conversation. You actually mentioned that you tried this and you were doing that, and you tried a lot of different things. And I really think that speaks to my heart as an artist with entrepreneurial tendencies. I'll never call myself an entrepreneur. I always have to preface it. The fact that you've tried so many things, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs early on try one thing or two things, and then they hang up their hat and they say, I'm done. I can't do this. But there's a tenacity in trying a whole bunch of things and seeing what sticks. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the mindset you have to have that kind of tenacity.
Well, I think you have to sort of get comfortable with failing a lot. So with us, we never really got too set on one thing. We were kind of like, we were always kind of doing 2 or 3 things at once. We had an agency, we were selling info products, and we were doing coaching, and we were trying to do all those at the same time. And whatever one would pan out would be the one that we would sort of go all in on. But the problem that we were running into was that if we were trying to run an agency, trying to run a coaching business, and trying to sell courses, is that we never got focused enough on any one of those 3 things. So, none of them ever grew. So what we were doing is we had, 3 or 4 things running at any given time, and none of them were really gaining any traction.
They were making money, but never scaling.
Right, exactly. They weren't really scaling. We were making little bits of money here from all these different things. And the idea being, well, one of these is going to hit, right? One of these is just going to hit big. And once it hits big, we're going to put all of our effort into that one. And that's the one that we're going to scale. But we kind of had it backwards, really. The thing that we eventually figured out is, like, in order to scale, you need to cut out all of them except for one and focus on the one, right? And that's kind of the decision we made in 2017 with the podcast is, let's just go all in on this and monetize it through affiliate marketing, and let's cut out all these other things. And that turned out to be one of the best decisions we've ever made in our business, was just, cutting out all the other stuff. And it was tough too. We actually had at one time we had a continuity membership program that had a few hundred people in it that was making a recurring several $1,000s a month. And one day we decided, you know what, let's just flip the switch. Let's turn it all off. So we went into Stripe, shut down, canceled out everybody that was on our membership, turned it off, sent an email saying we're shutting this program down. And, we had to make some really, really hard decisions like that. We were turning off income streams so that we can get hyper focused on where we wanted to go.
Now that had to be a little scary. And I want to talk a little further about that. Shutting off active income and essentially is firing clients, right?
Oh yeah.
It's, in this case, it's not a client. It's a kind of a passive revenue or a passive income. But where do you have to be in that business journey mentally to go, all right, we're done. We're shutting this revenue off and we're out of it?
I mean, really, it was just we had to have faith in our abilities. We at that point we agonized over the decision to turn off the recurring revenue from the membership that we had at the time. Like it wasn't something where on a Wednesday we got together and said, "Hey, let's shut this off," and we're like, "Okay," and just flip the switch.
It wasn't a beer decision.
No, this was a discussion that we went back and forth over for months, and for us, there was a sort of catalyst moment on the membership. A catalyst for us deciding to shut it down was when we actually mailed an offer to our list of like, do you want to sign up for, I think we offered like a lifetime deal on like a Black Friday or something. And we thought, okay, this is going to generate a really, really big payday for us. This is going to be a really big spike in income. We promoted it and it kind of didn't do too well. And so we thought to ourselves, we went, look, we just, people are paying us $100 a month to be in this membership. That's what it was at the time. We just offered them a lifetime membership for like $500. They could get it, for life for the cost of 5 months. And the sales volume on it wasn't that high. And so the realization that we had was that the offer just wasn't that good. If we're trying to sell something that, somebody can get lifetime for the price of 5 months and still nobody really wanted it that much, we're just not putting that good of an offer out there. And so we just had to take a hard look at the offer and realize that we're putting something out there that supports us. We were making this membership site to create income for us and recurring revenue, but when we really step back and look at it, it was something that we built with the intention of serving us and not built with the intention of serving the customers.
Oh,
right?
I love that. That realization is huge. Because I think a lot of people go into creating a business not to serve an audience, but to serve themselves, which is a huge mistake.
Yeah. And I really think that sort of like, whatever year span it was, 7 or 8 year span where we're kind of trying different things, our motives were wrong, right? Our motives were, let's figure out what thing is going to generate us the most money instead of figuring out what problem can we go and solve in the world that people would be willing to pay for us. Like we were just coming at it from the wrong perspective, which is what led us to jump from thing to thing to thing to thing. And when we finally decided, let's hone in on this podcast, it was from this realization of, if we just go and bring on some of the smartest people from our network and some of our friends who, do really cool things and get connected to other people that are doing smart, and we create the content and just put it out into the world for free, we know we're providing value. We're providing value for the people that are following us, and we'll figure out the monetization as we go. For us at that point, affiliate marketing was starting to do pretty well for us. So we just figured out how to tie them together. And that was what led us down the path that we've been on for the last, almost going on 5 years now.
It's funny when you talk about going from thing to thing and building a business that serves you. It's interesting to me how many people don't stop and think about, are you serving a need and scratching an itch in the marketplace, or are you just serving your wallet?
Yeah.
And, I look back to when I started Ad Zombies, my copywriting business, and the business started by accident. I'm very transparent about that. I was in a Facebook group. Someone needed help. I've been writing stories my entire life as a creative director. So it's pretty effortless for me to just sit in front of a keyboard and type some shit up and boom, there's words, right?
Yep.
And so it started by accident, but I never set out like, I'm going to build a multi-million-dollar copywriting business, because it wasn't a thing for me. It was just like, that's my natural gift. And I'm very fortunate that it's my gift, but that's what turned into the business.
Yeah.
And so my approach has always been, and this is something that I've learned really throughout my life, but in the last decade, a lot of time with Gary Vaynerchuk, really understanding the jab, give before you ask.
Absolutely.
And that's how I built this business. And it sounds like, if there's a piece of advice to entrepreneurs that are listening to this and haven't gotten that figured out yet, Don't build the business to sustain your life. Build the business that solves a problem. Build a business that helps someone accomplish something.
Absolutely.
And whether that's a product, a service, it doesn't matter. You have to look at that and go, there's a problem that needs to be resolved. I can resolve it with my expertise. Then you build your business off of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing that when we are sort of working with people or giving them advice or doing any sort of consulting, that's something that seems to pop up is people come to us with these ideas, and the first thing we ask them is like, what market are you serving and what problem are you solving for that market? And a lot of times they don't have answers. And one thing that I'm seeing more and more of these days is people looking at existing products that are already kind of doing the job good enough and going, I'm just going to make another one of those, right? Like ever since, Lead Pages and ClickFunnels came out, how many page builders have popped up since then?
1,000 of them.
And you've got back in the day when we're looking into autoresponders. I think you had Aweber and you had GetResponse and maybe MailChimp was around. And then that was kind of it. Now today there's 400 options to choose for your email marketing autoresponder service. And I think one of the things that people don't put enough time into is like, okay, yes, you're solving a problem, but is there something else out there that's solving that problem already that's good enough? Or are you going to make some sort of massive improvement to how you solve that problem? But I think so many people just go, oh man, ClickFunnels is killing it. So if I do that, just get a piece of what ClickFunnels is making, then I can, if I only get 10% of what they're making, that's still a $10 million a year business. So let's go that path. And for whatever reason, it doesn't typically pan out very well for them. And it's just something that I don't think enough people take a look at when they're creating their business.
Yeah, they come at it the wrong approach. They're like, well, okay, if ClickFunnels is making $100 million a year, I don't know what they're making, and I can just make $500,000 a year, I'm happy. But
exactly,
at the end of the day, you haven't created anything magical. In fact, the only thing you've done is ripped off somebody else's work rather than doing something cool and unique. Yeah. Now, I don't have a problem with you ripping off someone's work. If that's your thing, great, fine. I mean, look at the world of drop shipping. I think that kind of sits in that space of, all right, I'm going to sell this magic widget 1,000 times, and hopefully my supply chain doesn't break coming from AliExpress, right?
Right.
And you saw over the last couple of years what's happened in that space. It's fallen apart because of the inability to move product from point A to point B in an efficient manner. When you've got the ability to, like, I live in a city where there's an Amazon hub, and I can order something today and it will be at my front door by 9:00 tonight.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to wait 15 weeks to get a swimsuit.
Yep. I'm the same way. In San Diego, we're the same way. And in fact, when I do searches on Amazon, I sort it by Prime so I can see which things are going to get to me the fastest.
That's right. It's amazing when you get so used to that. I call it the microwave mentality. Yeah. You get so used to things happening so fast. I remember when microwaves used to cook a potato in like 2.5 minutes, and we thought, man, that is baller. I can get a potato in 2.5 minutes. Now you're 30 seconds in and you're like, come on, hurry up already. All right. It's not fast enough.
Exactly.
So Matt, let me ask you a little bit about how you see the business world today in this, let's call it the COVID era, which at some point will pass, right? It's we're not here to solve the world's medical problems, but we're here to talk about business. What mistakes do you see businesses making right now when it comes to the way they run and operate their businesses in this COVID environment?
Well, right now I see a lot of businesses. There's a lot of businesses out there that aren't sort of leaning into the fact that COVID's going on. They're almost like ignoring the fact that COVID is going on with their messaging. I think, from a messaging copywriting perspective, you should be addressing the elephant in the room. You should be talking about COVID. You should be talking about how whatever problems you're solving, you're still solving them even in this current environment. So I think that's one thing too. I think with the whole COVID thing that's going on right now, one of my sort of frustrations is, I get on Reddit a lot. Reddit's sort of one of my hangouts when I'm sort of bored and mindlessly scrolling my phone from time to time. Reddit is where I'll hang out. I'm not really on Facebook much or any of the other social media platforms. But on Reddit, one thing that I've noticed is, there's a lot of people right now that are sort of out of work. They're saying, I'm out of work. I've got nothing to do. I'm just at home, playing video games and watching Netflix. And, I can't wait for this next stimulus check to come so I can get back on my feet because my last stimulus check ran out. And I think the thing that most people those types of people aren't seeming to think about is that like the COVID thing is just sort of restructuring our world right now.
Right.
What's happening right now is everybody is realizing the flaws in a lot of the systems that are happening. A lot of the existing business models that were very prolific are no longer going to be as prolific because these holes are being found in them. And so I think people should be looking at sort of alternate ways to generate their income. I think we're moving into a world where you're going to see less and less of this corporate structure where you have the boss at the top and then there's employees under them and there's employees under each of these employees. I think a lot of that corporate structure over time is going to sort of fade away. And so people that are sitting around like waiting for the next stimulus check and watching Netflix and just wondering when this is all going to be over, those people should be looking right now is how do I start creating additional income streams? How do I get involved in this like gig economy? And I think that's one of my big frustrations of what I'm seeing going on with COVID right now is all of these people think because I can't work right now in the traditional job that I was working in, I can't create income for myself. But I feel like there's just as much, if not more opportunity right now to go create income streams online and get involved in the gig economy and, drive food around for people and, be an Amazon delivery driver and all that kind of stuff.
So Matt, what I think I'm hearing you say, I'm going to paraphrase this, is just fucking make something happen.
Yeah, exactly. Take responsibility.
Right. You can dream about building a business, but as long as you're binge watching Netflix, you're never going to make that business happen. And I'm with you. I think right now is an incredibly unique time to start something. Because businesses that start during downtimes, during bad economies, during struggles and challenges tend to be the ones that are the strongest long term.
Absolutely. Yep.
And have a shelf life because you know how to operate in the difficult times. And so now to me, now is the ideal time to start something. Scary as shit. I mean, listen, building a business from the ground up is scary. I will tell you that there are going to be times when you start building a business that are going to scare the crap out of you. I'm speaking from experience, having built several businesses. It's scary, I for a while, and I don't know if you can relate to this. I've got a team, of my Ad Zombies team is global. And what I realized when COVID hit, and we were uniquely prepared for it because my team is global. Mm-hmm. But when COVID hit, I realized I was sitting in my house and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm responsible not just for my team, but literally hundreds and hundreds of people because it's the team member, their spouse, their kids, right? Their income is derived from working for this company. Holy crap, that weight really fell on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. But at that moment, I'm like, wait, but I've got a business that's built for this exact event. Like, exactly. There's only 2 or 3 people in our corporate headquarters on any given day, but everyone else is where they are. And so nobody, like today is a weird day. I'm the only one in the office, but usually Megan, our director of creative services, on the other side of the wall, and Brandon, our ops guy, his office is a mile from here. He'll come in for our leadership meetings, but we keep it nice and tight. But man, this business was set up for that. Yeah. And so when you're doing this thinking rather than binge watching, think about the way the world is structured today. I think office space, like I have right now in this moment, isn't going to be the way a lot of businesses run 2, 3, 4 years from now. In fact, I think a lot of office space is going to be sitting vacant for a very long time.
Absolutely.
And so what opportunity is there in that, right? What can you do in that space? If you're into real estate or commercial real estate, how can you be the change in that industry based on the availability? And I'm just throwing that out there for anyone who's listening that's in that space. What do you think you could do with that space? Like, I would love to see big empty malls turned into something amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. So there's a lot of opportunity, and what you have to do to embrace that opportunity is look at where the world is today and go, how can I change that? What can I do that is different? And just start thinking outside of the box. And there's no idea that's bad or stupid. They're just ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day you're going to go, got it. Right. Now, to your point, you were talking about marketing and messaging and the phrase marketing for the now, right? For what we're going through today, I think is critical.
Mm-hmm.
You can't ignore the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean your messaging has to address COVID or coronavirus, right? No, but your messaging can be fun and playful and unique. Like we have an ad that talks about hitting the reset button, but the reset button has nothing to do with the situation that we're in right now. It has to do with a whole bunch of other things related to marketing.
Right.
But it's a play on things that really pulls people in to, and then your marketing sounds very contemporary, very current, like you know what the hell's going on. Now, that doesn't mean it's evergreen. That can shift over the next 3 to 6 months, or, a vaccine comes out and has a 90% efficacy, and then suddenly half the world is immunized. Great. Guess what happens? The messaging changes. Yep. Your messaging is going to be fluid, and you have to be able to roll with it as it changes.
Absolutely.
I think that's important.
I think with like especially with like advertising, when I'm on Facebook and places like that, I just see people that are running the same ads that they were running a year ago without changing up the messaging. And I don't think it's going to work as well as it once did. People are, when the COVID stuff first hit, people started tightening up their wallets a little bit, and some of the spending, they have to make the decisions what they're going to spend their money on right now. And if you're not sort of showing people that you can still create value in their lives, even right now with what's going on in the world, you're going to make a lot less sales than you were before.
100%. So Matt, my final question today, and I've really been thinking about this lately for marketers, entrepreneurs. It doesn't have to be a marketer specifically, but what do you think is the most underutilized or untapped marketing resource right now, this moment in time, that people are just not looking at for their businesses and utilizing to its fullest?
I mean, the first thought that pops into my head is honestly podcasting, but that might just be because I'm in that space and I'm dealing with it all the time. But some of the biggest traction we've got in our business, as far as audience growth, as far as new people, we call it our ecosystem, new people coming into our ecosystem, which is our podcast, our YouTube channel, our Facebook group, our email list. That's what we kind of call our ecosystem. And the biggest growth that we've had from that has been going on other people's podcasts, just like this one. My partner and I, we Dennis, you called us the two-headed dragon because we kind of split effort, and we're both on about 2 podcasts a week. So 8 podcasts a month for our business, and just going on a lot of podcasts has been probably the biggest, growth generator in our business. And I just don't think I think a lot of people still hear podcasting and sort of go, oh yeah, another podcast. They're sort of in the podcasting space. Even other podcasters are sharing memes about how like everybody has a podcast now and things like that. So I think, podcasts are kind of the butt of a lot of people's jokes. But if you look at our business, it's been the biggest growth generator in our business. So we have no intention of slowing down going on people's podcasts.
Now, it's interesting. One of the things that you said about podcasting is that it's been this big driver for your business. And a lot of business owners don't understand how easy it is to set up a podcast. So I want to kind of dive into the documenting and not creating side of things, which I talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. And for those that follow my content, you see that I film a lot of things. I film almost everything. We have meetings, we have conversations, and those things make it into content. The same thing can happen in those critical meetings. If you're just recording them, you can strip the audio off the video, sit down and record a quick open that explains what the person is listening to, slap a piece of music on it, and start your podcast. And by the way, your first podcast is going to sound like shit, and that's okay. And over time, your podcast is going to get better and you're going to have more thought and intent. But what's really cool is that when you're documenting versus just going, okay, we're going to script this thing and it's going to be perfect and amazing, and I'm going to ask all these formatted questions, you come up with this thing that's just a living, breathing, growing entity that is easy to replicate because you're not scripting it. You're sitting down, filming it, then pulling your audio, creating the episode, and lather, rinse, repeat. And like you just mentioned, Dennis Yu is going to be on the EntreGrow podcast in the next couple of weeks. Now, depending on where you are listening to this right now in this life cycle, you may have already heard the Dennis Yu interview, or the Dennis Yu interview could be coming up in a couple of episodes. But at the end of the day, you're building your brand, you're building your reach and extending your business across multiple channels by doing something like building a podcast. And it's not difficult to do. All you've got to do is put some intent behind it.
Absolutely. Yep. And I mean, just to sort of add to that, if you look at our podcast becomes what you see on our YouTube channel. It's all clips from the podcast. Our Facebook group, we're curating content from the podcast. Our email list, we're emailing about what we learned on our most recent podcast. Joe and I, we actually have a print newsletter, a physical print newsletter that we mail people. This is all our takeaways from the podcast interviews we do. So you can actually subscribe on a monthly basis to get this. It's almost like a little magazine every month. And it's literally, these are our aha moments and the takeaways from the guests that we interviewed. So the podcast literally feeds everything else that we do in our business.
So Matt, someone listening to this or watching this says, okay, but if I film this or record this, how do I don't have an editor. I don't have a person that can make pieces of content for YouTube. What do I need to do? How do I do this? How do you do it?
I mean, we do actually have a team member now who does a lot of our editing, but one of our friends, Chris Kermitsos, he just put out a book called Start Ugly. And that's what I tell people. Don't worry about that stuff. Just start ugly. It's going to not look the best on YouTube and wherever you put it. But I think there's something that's kind of cool about that. I think it's kind of cool for me now to look back at the content I was putting out in 2007, 2008, 2009. There's almost like a nostalgia there for me to go look back at it.
Okay. But wait, do you be realistic? Do you cringe a little bit? Cause I do.
Some of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of it. But there is a cool element to seeing that journey. And I know a lot of people who follow us now will go back and dig into our archives and look at the stuff that we were putting out in 2007 and see how far we've come. And that actually becomes like a point of inspiration to want to do more of the types of things we're doing, to see how far we've come. So I think, you might be sort of worried about it now, but if you look back in the future, I think you'll be happy that you were putting stuff out.
100%. Now, I will say this to my cringe moments when I look back, and I'll just go back to 2017. I was like 45 pounds heavier. So every picture of me and every video of me, I'm a lot fatter. And boy, I never thought I was vain. Like 53 years, Matt, I never thought I was vain. Look, I'm not attached to my hair because it's not attached to me. But when I see that, I cringe. But guess what? I am so glad I documented the early days and moments of the start of Ad Zombies as a business, because the documenting is what's helped grow the business, which turned into video content, which turned into podcasting, which turned into me speaking at traffic and conversions and social media marketing world. And you think about the opportunities that come from just doing the daily work of running your business and documenting it. It's super easy.
Absolutely.
And so I like the ugly part, but for me, it wasn't ugly. It was fat.
Yeah, actually, for me, when I look back at the stuff that I cringe over is just the way I spoke. Right back then, I was very, very unconfident. I don't think that's the right word. I was not confident on camera.
You lacked confidence.
I lacked confidence on camera. So all of my early videos, I'm just sort of hunched over at a little ball, and I'm like, hey, thanks for watching my video. I'm just very sort of uncomfortable, no confidence. And so I just look back and look at how sort of timid I was back then. And that's what makes me cringe when I watch the old videos. As far as appearance, I haven't really changed a whole lot in the last 15 years or so, but as far as I guess eloquence and knowing what I'm talking about, that's changed quite a bit.
Well, that is awesome. Matt, if followers of the EntreGrow podcast want to follow you and where you are, can you drop some handles for us right here, right now?
Sure. So we've got a Facebook group over at flowchartgroup.com. That's we share pretty much everything there. So the new episodes we release, that we put them on there, YouTube videos. We actually did a live stream to that group earlier this morning where we literally walked through a bunch of our takeaways from some of our most recent interviews. So that's probably the best place, because you go to that group and you'll sort of learn about everything else that we're doing, and learn more about our podcast, and follow me and Joe personally, because we're in that group all the time. And yeah, that's probably the best place to go for right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today. I'm so glad we got this chance to sit down, have a conversation, and would love to maybe revisit you again next year sometime.
Would love it. Absolutely. It's been a blast.